Assalamu alaikum everyone. It is a great pleasure to be here today to present our group work on the topic Overtourism and Destination Resilience in Italy. This presentation explores how Italy became one of the most visited countries in the world, has faced and responded to the challenges of overtourism, and how the concept of destination resilience has become increasingly important, especially after the COVID-19 pandemic. Today, we will collectively analyze five research papers that highlight both the negative and positive impacts of overtourism in Italy and examine how destinations can recover and rebuild through resilience and sustainable practices. So, we are the Voyagers, a team of 11 members from the Department of Tourism and Hospitality Management at Noakhali Science and Technology University. Myself, Kanis Fatima, ID BBH2221037F, and my other team members are Sanjida Noim, Mahmudul Hassan Antor, Mohammad Mehdi Hassan, Sakib Al Jubair, Sabrina Akhtar, Urijita Chakma, Rina Akhtar, MD Azizur Rahman, MD Shahadat Hossain, MD Ajidul Hakim. So now let's begin our presentation. Today, together with my teammate Sanjita Noim, we are going to present a very interesting and insightful research paper titled The Missing Link Between Overtourism and Post-Pandemic Tourism, Framing Twitter Debate on the Italian Tourism Crisis. This paper was written by Cecilia Pasquinelli and Marpina Trunfio, and it was published in 2021 in the Journal of Place Management and Development. The reason we choose this paper is that we perfectly captures one of the biggest transformations in global tourism, how destinations that once suffered from over tourism suddenly faced under tourism because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Italy, as many of us know, is one of the world's most visited countries, famous for its cultural heritage, art, architecture, and food. But it also became one of the most affected destinations when the pandemic started. So, let's begin with the background. Overtourism and the shift in Italy's tourism escape. Before the pandemic, overtourism has become one of the most serious challenges in the global tourism management. Overtourism occurs when excessive tourist numbers start to negatively affect the environment, the local culture, and the quality of life of residents. It leads to problems such as overcrowded streets, increased living cost, pollution, and the commercialization of heritage sites. Italy is one of the best examples of overtourism. Cities such as Venice, Florence, and Rome were struggling with huge crowds, especially during the summer season. This sudden change created an entirely new questions for both policymakers and citizens. How can Italy rebuild its tourism industry without repeating the mistakes of the past? That's exactly where the research steps in. The authors explored how people were discussing these issues on Twitter. They wanted to see whether the pandemic has changed public attitudes, were people still frustrated with tourists, or had they started to value tourism again. So, with the background in mind, let's move on the aim and objectives of the studies. Research aim and objectives. The main aim of the study was to analyze Twitter debates about over-tourism and post-pandemic tourism in Italy. The authors wanted to capture the public conversation that occurred during the crisis, not just the voices of policymakers, but the opinions of citizens, journalists, and tourism professionals. First, to identify how people's perceptions of tourism changed during the COVID-19 period. Secondly, identify how online communication through social media can influence the future direction of tourism policy in Italy. Third, link over tourism concerns with ideas of sustainability and responsible travel. And the last one is explore how online discussions shape tourism policy and awareness. This paper treats Twitter not only as a source of opinions but also as a kind of digital public sphere where society reflects on its own experiences and rethinks its values. To explore these questions, the author followed a qualitative and interpretive research design, which I will now explain. Research methodology. This study is primarily qualitative in nature. Instead of collecting numerical data, the researchers analyzed the content of Twitter posts related to Italian tourism. They began by identifying related hashtags such as hashtag overtourism, hashtag Italy tourism, hashtag Venice, hashtag COVID-19, and hashtag tourism crisis. These hashtags were chosen because they captured the intersection between the tourism industry, the pandemic, and the Italian destinations. The method used is called content analysis, a process of identifying patterns, themes, and keywords in written text. With the understanding of the method, let's now move to what they actually found, the key findings. Key findings. The findings show a very interesting transformation in a way people talked about tourism. Before the pandemic, the Twitter debate was dominated by complaints about overcrowding, noise, pollution, and the loss of authenticity in tourist. In Venice, for example, the presence of large cruise ships became a symbol of overtourism. However, once the pandemic began, the restrictions were imposed, the conversation changed dramatically. Business owners, hotel staff, and tour guides expressed fears about losing their livelihoods. At the same time, some residents shared how peaceful and clean their cities had become. In summary, before COVID-19, the focus was on the negative impacts of tourism. During the pandemic, the focus shifted to the value of tourism and how it could be reimagined for a sustainable for future. During the lockdown, many users began to promote ideas such as slow tourism, ecotourism, and local travel. Overall, the results reveal a process of social learning. The authors conclude that the shift in the conversation represents a turning point of Italy. Rather than aiming to simplify return to pre-pandemic numbers, the country should aim for a more sustainable, inclusive, and resilient tourism model. Now, let's discuss about the discussion and conceptual contribution. The authors connect two major phases in Italy's tourism. The period of over-tourism before COVID-19 and the post-pandemic recovery phase. Before COVID-19, the focus was reducing tourism due to over-tourism. And after COVID, the focus became recovering tourism but sustainability. This shows a shift from quantity to quality in Italian tourism debates. One of the key contributors of this paper is the idea of the digital public sphere. Twitter became a space where people could openly discuss tourism issues, share experiences, and express opinions about the need for more sustainable practices. To sum up my part, the paper clearly shows how Italy tourism debate evolved from frustrations over tourism to thoughtful reflection about sustainability after COVID-19. Through the analysis of Twitter data, the authors captured a living conversation, one that connects social attributes, crises, experiences, and policy immigration. In the next part, my partner Samia will continue by explaining how the authors discuss these findings in more depth, their theoretical contribution in tourism studies, and what research gaps remain for future scholars to explore. Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. I am Sanjida Noim. My ID is 54. We are presenting the research paper titled The Missing Link Between Over-Tourism and Post-Pandemic Tourism, Framing Twitter Debate on the Italian Tourism Crisis. Today, I will present the part of our article analysis that focuses on the conceptual link between over-tourism and post-pandemic tourism. The strength, gaps, and conclusions of the study. Let's start with the conceptual link between over-tourism and post-pandemic tourism. First, the study introduces the idea of the digital public sphere. This means that Social media platforms are not only spaces for opinion but also shape the way tourism is discussed and understood. Second, the research highlights emerging themes such as resilience, sustainability, and regeneration, key values that become more important after the pandemic. Third, it connects the extreme of overtourism, too many tourists, with the challenge of undertourism, too few visitors during COVID 19. Finally, the author suggests that tourism should not be seen only as an economic activity, it is also a social and communicative process shaped by how people share their experiences and debates online. Now, let's look at the strengths. Next slide, please. The study used an innovative approach, being the first to analyze Italian tourism through Twitter data. It also focused on a contemporary context, linking two major issues, over-tourism and COVID 19. Another strength is its practical relevance, showing how public opinion online can influence policymaking. Finally, it adds theoretical value, offering a new way to understand tourism crisis through communication. Now, moving to the gaps and limitations, the study focused only on Twitter, while other platforms like Instagram and Facebook might show different results. It covered only the early pandemic page, which is too short to see long term effects. Also, it lacked quantitative data and did not analyze how opinions vary across different regions of Italy. For the future, the authors suggest combining social media with statistical data to study tourism transforming in the long run. Now, in conclusion, the research shows that the pandemic reshaped Italy's tourism. Over tourism debate shifted towards calls for sustainable and community friendly tourism. Social media acted as a mirror of society's changing mindset. The key takeaway is that tourism must balance economic recovery with environmental and social well being. That's all from me. Thank you, everyone.
Good evening, everyone. I am Mahmudul Hassan Ontol. Today, I will be presenting on the topic a research methodological perspective on understanding over tourism in Mediterranean island. This research explores how over tourism impacts island destinations and how these based methodologies can help manage these challenges. Next, please. Let me begin with a simple idea. Too much of a good thing can become a problem. Over-tourism occurs when an excessive number of tourists negatively affect residents, the environment, and local services. The growth of low-cost airlines and affordable accommodations has made travel easier, but it has also created crowding in destinations like Venice, Barcelona, and Sardinia, especially during summer peaks. The main goal of the study is to develop a place-based this methodology to measure and visualize over-tourism in island areas. Now, to understand over-tourism, we must look at it through different dimensions of carrying capacity: environmental, physical, social, psychological, and economic. The study introduces three main stages. First one is developing measurement indicators. Second one is defining risk levels. And third and the last, drafting policy proposal to mitigate over tourism. Next one, the study focuses on islands, which are very fragile ecosystem. They depend heavily on tourism for income but suffer from environmental stress and limited land area. For example, Malta receives over 3 million tourists a year and it has already introduced reforms to control visitor numbers. In this paper, the author chose Sardinia, Italy, as their case study. This is one of the largest Mediterranean island and faces intense coastal tourism, especially during summer months. The author used the Dimin cycle uh, plan to check and act to structure their research. In planning, the developing a destinations plan as a social ecological system. They identify risk for each destination and check they measuring over tourism using spatial indicators. They designing policy actions for sustainability as they act. They are focused on the check phrase using local indicators of spatial association, a Z-based method that shows where tourism pressures is concentrated. The analyzes two main domains: tourism data and environmental data. Tourism data includes to, tourism data includes such as tourist density, accommodation density, and tourist intensity. And environmental data includes waste generation, water use, energy use, and carbon dioxide emission. These data are combined to detect hotspot of overtourism in Sardinia, coastal and east island areas. Now, I would like to call my group member Mehdi Hassan to presenting his part.
Good evening, listeners. I am Mehdi Hassan. I will talk about rest of the paper. So I will start with study area. Basically, Sardinia is the largest Mediterranean island with about 1.5 million residents. It has 8 ports. The airports connect with the rest of the Italy and Europe. The island's tourism is highly seasonal. In 2023, more than 7 million tourists arrived, and over 6 million of those came during the summer. It's basically a seasonal spot. Most visitors stay in coastal zones where the new private rentals and non-hotel accommodations are rapidly increasing. This heavily concentration during summers create resource pressure on water, waste management, and transportation networks. Now I will discuss about the results, tourism indicators. Using GIS spatial analysis, the author identified patterns of tourism hotspots, high clusters, low clusters, highlight Lisa maps, accommodation and coastal proximity. High clusters area with very dense tourist activity were found in the north, northeast, east and southeast coastal of Sardinia. Low clusters, basically with minimal tourism, were found in the island areas. Specific examples include Pula in southeast with a high accommodation density due to luxury hotels. Now I will talk about results, which is impact on environmental indicators. These indicators are basically concentrated with environment, waste production per tourist, carbon dioxide emission, airports and ports. Waste production per tourist has highest near Olbia in the north and Calgary in south. Carbon dioxide emission are significant to airport produced 557 gigameters of carbon dioxide. Now I will talk about the key findings and discuss. The findings show that the overtourism in Sardinia is not evenly spread. It is mostly coastal, concentrated in the time and space, while inner areas remain undervisited. This means policymakers could diversify tourism to off-season and inland destinations to reduce environmental stress. Finally, I conclude this paper, and I will talk about the conclusion and policy implication. To conclude, Sardinia does not yet face extreme overtourism, but several coastal zones, especially in the north and southeast, are already vulnerable. The author suggests developing a regional spatial plan focused on sustainable practices such as limiting beaches access and visitor numbers, reducing waste and improving energy efficiency, protecting natural and cultural resources, ensuring transparent use of tourist tax funds. They also propose apply DPSIR framework, drivers, pressure, state impact, and reasons to connect tourism growth and environmental impacts. Overall, the study proves that the spatial analysis and sustainability indicators are powerful tools to guide better tourism management in Iceland, like Sardinia and beyond. So that's all about my paper.
Hello everyone, my name is Sabrina Akhtar. Today I will be presenting a study titled Overtourism and Short-Term Rentals in Italian Cities, conducted by Filippo Catala and Antonello Romano and published in the Journal of Sustainable Tourism in 2020. This research explores how platforms like Airbnb have transformed urban centers such as Rome, Venice, Florence, and Milan, and how this transaction is conducted to the problem of overtourism. Next slide. Understanding the challenge. Overtourism refers to the excessive concentration of tourists in specific urban areas, creating pressure on resistance, infrastructure, and local communities. While tourism contributes massively to local economics, it also causes housing, storage, noise pollution, traffic congestion, and the erosion of community identity. In cities like Rome, Venice, and Florence, these effects are especially visible where the charms that attract tourists also becomes threatened by overcrowding. In our next slide, research objectives. The researchers set out to achieve four main objectives. One, map the concentration of Airbnb rental in major Italian cities. Two is analyze the social impacts, including rising rents and resistant displacement. Three, measure economic effects on both central and peripheral zones. And four is suggest policy recommendation for sustainable urban management. In the next slide, methodology. To address this goal, the study used a combination of spatial and statistical analysis. They collect data from Airbnb listing, tourism statistics, and census information from 2015 to 2019. By using GIS mapping, they identified high, medium, and low pressure zones, showing where short-term rental were most concentrated. Housing pressure was measured in terms of short-term rental per square kilometer, while rent increases and displacement trends were analyzed statically. Next slide. Here is the key findings. The special results were striking. In Rome, about 80% of Airbnb listings are in the central districts. Venice shows 70% concentration in San Marco and Canarigo. Florence has 60% in the Santa Croce and Duomo areas. Milan, while less effective, still has 25% in central zones. This clustering demonstrates how short-term rental identify touristification, turning historic centers into tourist-dominated space, while peripheral neighbors remain largely unaffected. Now I would like to call my teammate Sakib.
Thank you, Sabrina, for nicely presenting of our presentation's first part. Now I am presenting the rest of part of our presentation. Let's start with the social impacts, displacement and gentrification. Here you can see rising rents, community loss and quality of life. Let's shortly brief. Rising rents. Residents are displaced due to rising rents and community loss. Conversion of homes to short term rentals reduces long term availability and local community identity. And at last, quality of life. Noise, congestion, and traffic disrupt the daily lives of permanent residents. Next slide. Well, now we can see the economic findings, uneven distribution. Here you can see a chart where Airbnb growth versus rent increase in Rome, and otherwise high revenue, housing pressure, and uneven benefits. High revenue, tourism generates the significant revenue. For example, Rome 12 billion euro per year and Airbnb host earn an average of 15,000 euro per year per unit. And the housing pressure, while short-term rentals boost revenue, they pressure the housing market. And last, the uneven benefits. Economic benefits are not distributed equally. Peripheral areas see minimal positive impact. Next slide, please. Well, now we can see policy implications. Here, the balancing cost and gain. For maximize briefing, here we can see a pie chart where show regulated versus unregulated rentals. And the regulated percentage is 60 and unregulated percent is 40. The study highlights a critical trade-off between economic gain and social cost. Regulations is necessary to ensure both revenue generation and resident well-being. Limit rentals implement limit on short-term rentals in high-pressure zones, and the licensing of taxation introduce fair licensing and taxation for rental platforms. And the last, sustainable planning. Here we can see the essential for urban planning to encourage responsible tourism. Well, next slide, please. Now we can see the key conclusions. The research confirmed that Airbnb activity is a significant driver of overtourism and primarily affecting central districts. And the impact goes to housing impact, social identity, and policy needed. Housing impact refers the rents rise and housing availability decreases, and the social identity, community identity is negatively affected by tourist density, and policy needed intervention is required for sustainable city planning. And the future studies should include, well, now we can see the last recommendations and future research. Here we can collaborate the three parts: policy action, promote alternatives, and continuous monitoring. And the policy actions refers limit rentals in crowded zones and implement fair taxation on platforms. And promote alternatives, encourage alternative tourism areas and sustainable tourism policies. And the last, continuous monitoring. Monitor rental distribution yearly and conduct post-COVID impact studies. My parts end here. Thank you all for listening to me for so long. And now I will call my next team member, Urzita Chakma, to present their paper.
Hello everyone, today I will present a paper which is titled The Effect of Population and Tourism Factors on COVID-19 Cases in Italy. This paper was written by Cesar Uguc, Mete Yaganoglu, Baris Ozer, Gulsa Tumuklu Ozer, Gul Tokdemir in 2021. The study explored how two major factors, population density and tourism activity, impacted the spread of COVID-19 in Italy. The authors used visual data analysis and forecasting models to gain insight that could help in managing public health and tourism policies during pandemics. In the next slide, this is the highlights. What the paper highlight. Let's start with some background. COVID-19 emerged at the end of 2019 and spread rapidly across the globe in early 2020. Italy became one of the worst hit countries with a very high number of cases, especially in the northern regions. Researchers observed that regions with higher population density and more tourist inflow tended to report more COVID-19 cases. This led to the central questions of study. How do population and tourism factors influence the number of COVID-19 cases in Italy? By answering this, the study aims to provide vulnerable, valuable insight for health authorities and policymakers. The next slide has the objectives. The study had four main objectives. First, identify the relationship between population tourism and COVID-19 cases. Second, to illustrate this relationship visually using data analysis techniques, making patterns easier to understand. Third, to forecast future COVID-19 cases using advanced models like BI-LSTM, which is a deep learning model, and ARIMA, which is a time series forecasting model. And finally, to provide practical guidance for policymakers. So,
I am Rina Akhtar. I will continue the presentation on the topic the effect of population and tourism factors on COVID-19 cases in Italy. This part focuses on the main findings and analysis, showing how population size and tourism activity influenced the spread of COVID-19 in different regions of Italy. Let's take a look at the methods and key results of the study. Methods. To investigate the relationship between population, tourism, and COVID-19 cases, the authors employed a combination of visual data analysis and predictive modeling techniques. Visual data analysis. The study utilized charts, graphs, and regional maps to demonstrate the correlation between COVID-19 cases, population density, and tourism inflow. Forecasting models. BILSTM. This advanced deep learning models captures temporal patterns in both forward and backward direction within time series data. ARIMA, a classical statistical approach for time series forecasting which predict future values based on historical trends. Now the next slide. Key findings. The study identified several critical findings. Population density. Regions with higher population density experienced a sustainability higher number of COVID-19 cases. Tourism influence, regional disparities, and forecasting effectiveness. And after that, next slide, implications. The findings have importance of public health policy and pandemic management. That's it, health system preparedness, tourism regulation, data-driven decision-making, and policy formulation. And the last, next slide is conclusion. The study demonstrates the population density and tourism activity significantly influenced the spread of COVID-19 in Italy. The integration of visual data analysis and predictive modeling provides a robust framework for understanding and anticipating pandemic dynamic. These findings underscore the importance of data-driven policymaking and proactive management strategies in mitigating the impact of pandemic. Thank you for your attention.
Hey everyone. Today I'm going to present about a study, Venice and Overtourism, simulating sustainable development scenarios through a tourism carrying capacity model. Okay, let's begin. Now I'll talk about the abstract. Please, next slide. Okay, so Venice is one of the world's most beautiful yet overwhelmed cities, a symbol of overtourism. This study looked for a balance between two competing goals, maximizing tourism revenue and protecting residents' quality of life. To do this, the researcher used something called Tourism Carrying Capacity Model, or TTC model. It helps us to determine how many tourists a city can handle before tourism becomes harmful. But instead of using fixed numbers, they introduced a fuzzy linear programming model, basically a flexible system that deals with uncertain and incomplete data controlled from both tourists and locals. The results? Yes, a more realistic and practical way for cities like Venice to manage visitor flows and plan sustainable tourism strategies. Now I'll talk about the introduction. Next slide, please. Okay. Over the last 25 years, tourism in Venice has exploded. The number of visitors are quadrupled. Back in 1988, there were around 5 million day visitors a year. Now there are more than 22 millions. What caused this? Cheap flights, online platforms like Airbnb, and even giant cruise ships bringing thousands of people at once. Venice, with its fragile environment and small population, simply can't handle this much more visitors every day. So this surge has raised a big question. Is tourism in Venice still sustainable? The answer is no. The earlier researcher showed that already warned that also too many visitors could make life unbearable for locals. That's why this research aimed to update the old models and find a smarter database solution for today's reality. Now let's talk about the literature review. Next slide, please. So in this part, in simple terms, tourism carrying capacity means figuring out how many tourists a place can host without damaging its environment, economy, and community. It is not only about crowd size, it's about the balance. Too many tourists can raise prices, harm culture, and cause tensions with locals. Researchers talk about three key dimensions like social, physical, and ecological capacity. But there is no one size fits for all formula. Every destination is different, and that worked for Venice might not work for another city like Cox's Bazar or anywhere else. That's why the authors use a fuzzy approach. It allows flexibility, recognizing that data isn't perfect and human behavior is unpredictable. This makes their models not just theoretical, but sometimes local government could actually use this to manage over tourism. Okay, thank you everyone for listening me. Now I'll call my next member to present his slides.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, sir, for giving me an opportunity. My presentation today is about over-tourism and destination religions in Italy. Focus on case of Venice. Venice is one of the most famous and fragile cities in the world, but also one of the best examples how too much tourism can damage a destination. For example, before the COVID-19 pandemic, Venice was one of the most overcrowded tourism destinations. Millions of visitors arrive each year. For exceeding the city's capacity, the narrow straight canal beach were the constantly crowded, and the fragile ecosystem, the log on was under the extreme pressure from the cruise ship and pollution. However, during the pandemic, when the tourism suddenly stopped, Venice experienced rare movement, the beach and recovered. The canal became clearer than ever before. The city's natural beauty reemerged. One the symbolic movement, the amidst the world was when dolphins were spotted swimming there. The Venice Canal shows how quickly nature can return and when human activities slow down. I will discuss four key facts from the research paper. Materials and method, result and discussion, research gap and improvement for future researcher. Next part, please. Material and method. In a material and method section, researchers try to find out how to many tourist venues can handle the sustainability culture, environment, local people. To do this, they use a tourism carrying capacity model based on the fuzzy linear programming approach. That might sound technical, but it quite simple interface. The model calculates the optimal number of tourists Venice can receive each day while balancing two goals. Number one, maximum tourist income. Number two, minimize negative effect on the resident and environment. They divide tourism into three groups. Number one, tourists stay in hotel. Number two, tourists stay in the non-traditional place like Airbnb. Number three, day tripper who visit but do not stay overnight. They also study seven main system, the city, number of accommodation, hotel and non-hotel. Number two, restaurant and food service. Number three, parking facility. Number four, public transport by boat. Number five, waste management. Number six, cultural site like Saint Mark Square. Number seven, environment limit. Because it is impossible to get perfect data and researchers use fuzzy number, meaning the included range and uncertainty in their calculation. This made their model more realistic and flexible. Next slide, please. Result and discussion. Now let's move to result and discussion. The simulation shows that Venice can handle about 52,000 visitors per day in the sustainable way. 14,500 tourists stay in hotel, 22,000 stay in Airbnb, and 14,600 day tripper. This balance would create an estimated income around 8.7 million euros per day. However, the reality, Venice receive more than that, sometimes more than 1 million visitors per day. Most of them are day tripper who spend little money but carried huge pressure, transport, waste, and space. This imbalance creates several problems. Number one, overcrowding, Sand Mark Square and Canal. Number two, pollution from boat and cruise ship. Number three, less the local pollution because living cost rich. Number four, damage and cultural heritage. The model proved that if Venice continued the receipt to many short-term visitors, it will lose both authentic culture and economic sustainability. To manage this, research suggests new sustainable policies like number one, limited daily visitor number. Number two, introduce the reservation system. Number three, creating terminal outside the city and control entry. Number four, promoting tourism, including tourism to visit less crowded area and using smart technology monitor the visitor flow. Those areas help to build a destination resilience, meaning the ability of the city recover the adapt while protecting identity. Next slide, please. Research gap. Now let's look at research gap. What was missing before this study? Old research are on Venice, especially in the 1980, 1990, use base mathematical model to measure tourism limit. Those studies assume that all data were fixed and certain, but to the world, tourism is much dynamic with the new challenge like the risk, the low-cost flight, to the sharing economy, Airbnb, and online booking, causing tourism and unpredictable visitor behavior. So, earlier model could not reflect the uncertainty and complexity model tourism. The new research that fill the gap by introducing fuzzy logic and which accept the uncertainty real life variation. It also consider the impact of digital platform data availability, something old study and never include. Improvement and future.
Next slide. Although those papers made great progress, there is still room for the improvement and for the research. Future study could apply the same phasing model to other Italian destinations such as Rome, compare the result. At the environmental factor like air and water quality, climate change, sea level reach, which are the serious threat to the Venice. Use the real-time data from the smartphone, GPS and camera to get more accurate and tourist number. Include the local community perspective. Measure the not just economic impact but also residents' happiness and quality of life. Develop policies simulation for the example testing how different the ticket system, taxation and tourism zone affect the city's sustainability.
Good evening, everyone. An honorable teacher, today I am going to summarize the conclusion part of the research paper titled Venice and Overtourism Simulating Sustainability Development Scenarios Through a Tourism Carrying Capacity Models. Today I will discuss the conclusion in many key point parts. The first slide is Venice is getting too crowded. Every year, more and more tourists visit Venice. The city is small and built on water, so too many people cause problem. Streets get packed, boats get stuck, and local people feel uncomfortable. So researchers wanted to find out how many tourists can Venice handle each day without being harmed. Next slide. They built a special model to find the answer. The model looked at many things: hotels, Airbnb houses, transportation, and even how the city economy changes when tourists come. It helped them understand when tourism becomes too much. And the next slide. What did they discover? The study showed that Venice can safely manage about 52,111 tourists per day, such as around 50,550 stay in hotels, and the second is around 2,000 stay in the other types of accommodation. Around 14,561 are day visitors who come and live on the same day. If more people come than this, the city start facing overcrowding and damage. And the next slides. What problems are happening now? Too many day trippers make the city full but spend very little money. Airbnb makes housing expensive for locals, pushing them out of the city. The environment and old buildings are under stress. So Venice is losing its balance between tourism and local life. And the next slide is what solution did the study suggest? The researchers say Venice should not stop tourism. It should manage it wisely, diversify the economy so it does not depend only on tourists, control visitor entry points like train and bus terminals, use smart booking systems to limit how many people visit each day, encourages tourists to visit less known area. A program called Day Tourism started in 2014. And the next slide is describe the final message. Venice will survive only if tourism becomes smart, balanced, and sustainable. The goal is not to stop people from visiting, but to make sure that both visitors and residents can enjoy the city peacefully now and in the future. And this is my part of this presentation. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, honorable teacher,